Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Ramos Law Difference Makers podcast. I am your host, Dr. Jim Hoven, and today it is my pleasure to talk with just one more person in this life making a difference, making changes in the lives of others, and what a great job I have. Today, I have a chance to speak with an attorney, and this is an attorney that is not in our office, but is actually helping people, someone that we can send cases to help in their needs of disability and other things, but we're going to get to that. So my guest today is Mr. Tim Garvey, and he's from McDermott Law here in Denver, and we're going to talk not only about law, we're going to talk about music and food, two of my favorite things, by the way. So we're going to combine this. Tim, we're going to have a great time. Thanks so much for joining the show today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yes,
this
sir.
Is fantastic what you're doing.
Well, thank you so much for that. And, you know, it's important for us to get the word out about things that people might not know about. So we've had so many shows. I think, by the time that your episode drops, there's going to be roughly 105 shows that are under our belts. And so we've had a chance to do a good number of these. And we get a lot of comments of people saying, wow, I didn't know that. And that's really one of the cool things about what we do. So today, I want to, once we get into what you do, I really want you to share with the people what the need is in your type of law. And I'm not going to totally give it away. I'm going to let you describe that as we go. But for now, to what they call build the anticipation, we're going to let people know that Tim helps people who literally don't even know that they need help sometime until they really do. They're in desperate situations. So we're going to come back to that. But before we do that, I want to talk about your past. So first of all, you grew up in New Jersey, right?
I did grow up in New Jersey.
Were you a kid that was focused, driven? Were you kind of into the art side of things? What was your life like growing up?
That's interesting. So growing up in New Jersey, I had a twin brother. I still have a twin brother.
Yeah.
And we were an only zygote. So it was just the two of us.
You're an only zygote. I've never heard that, and I love it.
Thanks. Growing up in New Jersey was pretty, normal, right? It was the 80s and life seemed pretty normal. And then my family we came out here to Colorado on vacation in the mid 80s, and family fell in love with it. And so in 1989, my family packed up and moved from New Jersey to Larkspur, Colorado.
Larkspur. Now, how old were you at that time?
We were 13.
So 13 is an interesting age to make a cross-country move. Did you guys deal well with it, you and your brother? Or were you like, man, this sucks. Our friends are all here. I don't like it. And because Larkspur is not the hub of activity from New Jersey. I don't know if you came from a big city or rural New Jersey, but Larkspur is as rural as it gets.
It is. It was a huge change. It was a huge change for us. There was definitely some adversity that came with it. It was new friends, skinny kid from Jersey with a weird accent and a twin brother. We stood out and went to high school, junior high and high school in Castle Rock. And it was a very different environment from what we grew up in New Jersey. There was definitely a cultural melting pot in New Jersey that I think, I was used to and just sort of got, took for granted type of a thing. And then moving to Larkspur was great. It was, we had a nice house. We had 5 acres. We had a horse. Very different from New Jersey, though. And the worst thing, with 1989, so we were in the southern part of Douglas County going to high school in Castle Rock, Colorado. 1989, long-distance phone calls were a thing. And for some reason... The 719-303 divide was not put at the El Paso County, Douglas County county line. It was about 3 miles north into Douglas County, and I lived south of that. So it was long distance for me to call anybody.
Your friends.
All my friends.
And your parents were happy with that because, like I said, no all-encompassing plans at that time, no cell phone going on. It's literally long-distance charges.
Long-distance calls, and those added up pretty quick in 1989.
Really quick.
Yeah, and then we did run into some adversity with my family. There was a whole lot of optimism moving out here, and then that optimism probably didn't pan out quite the way my parents had thought. And
did they want to open a business and do that kind of thing when they came out here?
Yeah, no. So my dad was a technical writer and worked in the telecommunications industry. And when we were out here on vacation, he had sent out a bunch of resumes, and having had work experience in New York, New Jersey, the hub of telecommunications, got lots of hits on his resumes here, and then but ultimately we moved here without a job and without a clear plan. And it was the jobs didn't come as readily as I think they had anticipated. And so there were some tough financial times for us.
How did you guys deal with that as a family, especially if you came from something where you had more means, if you will, and then you come into this? I'm sure there were lessons that you learned. Your mom had to obviously probably do something different than the plan, and maybe she wasn't planning on getting a job and she had to, or maybe you guys had to scrape by. But what was the lessons that you guys got from that?
Yeah, well, I think for my brother and I, our work ethics kicked in. So we were both got jobs at 15. Started washing dishes at the local summer camp that was just down the road.
Yes.
And then when we turned 16, my brother and I both started working full time. And you started off. Was I always a dedicated, focused type of a person? And I think that there's a mixed answer. If we're talking grades and the like, no, because grades weren't doing me any good when I needed to sort of care for myself financially. And so work became the focus for me. And, fortunately for me, I was always smart enough, I guess, to be able to show up to class, pay attention, and do literally nothing else and pass the class. And so, I graduated high school. I think when I applied to law school, I had to get my high school transcripts, which I don't understand why, but but I had to get my high school transcripts. And I remember looking and getting my high school transcripts and looking them over and thinking, now I understand why my parents were always mad at me. Turns out the only A's I ever got were in gym classes. And I think I graduated high school in about the bottom 25% of my class.
Now, were you an athlete too? So you had the gym class success, but you worked your tail off full time starting at 16.
Yeah.
Were you into athletics or other stuff, or there was no time based on, you need to make money to take care of business?
Yeah, sure. I did wrestle in high school. And looking at me now, you're probably thinking, you wrestled? Like, why would you do that? And the reason I did it is because my brother loved wrestling. He was really, really into it. He's the older twin, so he's a little bit bigger, a little bit stronger. That's usually how things go. And he loved wrestling. And when we would fight, he would beat me up.
Oh.
And so I had to learn how to wrestle so that I could at least have some success.
You could compete.
That's right.
Survive.
Keeping my brother from beating me up. I actually shared that story with him. I don't know, it's sometime in the past 6 months, because he's got a couple of kids now. One of them's a freshman in high school who's wrestling. And he was like, yeah, I'm so glad that Angus is wrestling. I love wrestling. Didn't you love wrestling? And it's like, no, I only wrestled so that you would stop beating me up. And that was it.
That was crazy.
Yeah.
So are you guys, being twins, are you very similar? Do you know what each other is thinking, and you're connected in that way that we hear twins about?
That'd be fantastic. That's not true.
It's not true.
Not for us. We're close. He's definitely a good friend. We've known each other our whole lives, obviously. And but we've never had that type of connection. In our younger days in high school, certainly, we competed for everything. We competed for friends. We competed for parents' attention. We competed for jobs, and so there was a lot of friction and tension with us.
Because you felt it. You knew you were competing for these things.
Yeah, and even if it wasn't on a conscious level,
yes,
it was. We were, especially where we lived, there weren't a whole lot of, at that time, Douglas County High School, I think our graduating class was around 300. So still a fairly small school back then. And especially where we lived, it was there wasn't a whole lot of other kids around us. I remember the first day going to the bus stop and getting there, and we were living on dirt roads, and the bus stop was like a quarter mile down the road, and we were excited to meet some new kids that might be friends someday. And so we get to the bus stop, and there are no other kids. It's just us. And then we get on the bus, and the bus drives, I don't know, maybe another mile down the road, picks up, I think, a brother and a sister. drives another mile down the road, picks up one other kid, and so it was. I don't know where I'm going with that story, but it was a bit of an isolated period, and so I think the competition became a little bit more intense. And then you couple that with some of the struggles that we were having with our home and our parents, and mom ended up getting cancer when I think we were sophomores.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, I mean, adversity, right? But adversity and struggle helped brought me, where I am today.
No question.
Yeah.
So I'm interested in, because I don't know the time frame of all this, but in between that moment that you just finished talking about, where kind of you finished high school, and you even mentioned applying to law school, getting into law school, graduating law school, and representing people like you do now.
Yeah.
There was a time where you ran a music shop, and I know the name of the music shop, Twist and Shout Records, because I grew up here in Denver, and it was a Denver shop, and it was really, really big music store, right?
Still is.
It still is.
Yeah.
So it's still around, still thriving.
Thriving.
And so tell me your connection to that. When did that happen? How did that happen? Are you a big music guy? Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. So happy to tell that story. So I think in my late teens, I really got into music, and it really helped me. I don't know what the right word is. It helped me, maybe it was helping me process feelings and emotions that I hadn't been dealing with or whatever. I don't know, but it really spoke to my soul and became a huge part of my life.
And were you playing music or just listening?
I've never had any musical talent.
Okay.
And so it was just a matter of listening. But then, as you get more into music, you discover certain subcultures, and you meet people and you make friends, and so in my my late teens, early 20s, I found myself with a lot of friends that were super close, and those formative years. I was hanging out in goth clubs. I was just really getting into all sorts of new kinds of music, and really branching out and making some really good friends. And I found that going to record stores was just a fantastic experience. The culture, the people, the music were all fantastic, and I loved it. And Twist and Shout was one of my favorite shops. And I remember going in there one time, and I was really, really, really into Radiohead. Mm-hmm. And this was before I was working there. And just out on the counter, they had a signed poster from Radiohead. And I asked somebody who was working, I was like, is that for sale? Like, I want to buy that. And they're like, no, it's the owner's collection. The band were just in here and had them sign it and stuff. About 20 minutes, maybe not even, maybe 10 minutes later, the owner, Paul Epstein, who's now a dear close friend, but I was just a customer at that time, and an 18-year-old kid or something, comes up and we start talking, and he says to me, well, if you want that poster, I'll let you have it.
What?
Yeah.
What did that mean for you?
Well, I mean, it was amazing. But I also became a lifelong customer at that point. And then I applied for a job. I briefly moved to Buffalo, New York for an ill-fated love affair, and then came back.
And were you in college at this time, or were you just experiencing life? And
college? Yeah, college for me was a bit of an on and off proposition.
Okay.
I took a year off out of high school, enrolled, and then I was probably enrolled in college on and off from 2000, or no, not 2000. Sorry, I'm older than that. From 1995 to, I think I graduated in 2003. And so I was working full time during that time. So I started working at Twist, I think it was 1998. I had moved back from Buffalo, and said, you know what, I'd always wanted to work in a record store. Let's see what happens. And I applied, and they gave me a job, and I ended up working there for a decade and making some lifelong friends, including the owners, Paul and Jill. When I turned 30 is when I said to myself, I don't know if I want to continue working in record stores when I'm 40 or 50 or 60. Perhaps more importantly, I don't know if record stores are still going to exist when I'm 40, 50. 60,
so you saw that change. Were you a big vinyl guy, or were you into cassette CDs? Like, where was your generation? Because I know when I came up, man, it was when it moved from 45s and vinyls to cassettes, that was a big deal.
Yeah.
And then the next quantum jump was when the CD hit the scene,
Yeah.
and all the radio stations were like, listen to Pink Floyd on this, and you're still
Sure.
listening through crappy speakers. It doesn't make any difference as you're on the radio, but it was all the rage. Tell us about that in the record store business.
Yeah. So for me, CDs was always that's where most of my money went. Although I have lots of records too. I'm currently embarking on a pandemic project where I'm listening to all of my CDs in alphabetical order. I've culled down my collection to probably about 2,000 CDs, and so I'm slowly making my way through that on my work from home days. I think I'm currently in the G's, and I've been at this project for probably about a year.
And do you, when you're doing that, so you're doing your work, you're working from home, however often you're doing that, or all the time, or whatever that situation is, do you listen to them in a certain way? Or is it background music where it's like cool to have it on and do some of those old things that you spent money on, do they ring a chord with you where they bring back memories or situations, or like you say, love affairs or hate affairs, anything like that?
Yeah, it's actually been a really, really fun project for me because it is mostly on in the background, right? Like I've got it on and I'm working while I'm doing it, and a lot of times it's just like, oh yeah, I remember this. But there are those time machine moments, right, where a certain song comes on, and you're suddenly transported. And hopefully my boss isn't listening to this, but sometimes. I'll stop working and turn that song up and just sort of experience and be in the moment for that.
I'm sure he'd be fine with that, basically, because when you fill your soul up and your cup up
That's
like
right.
that, you just pour out even more after.
That's
so
right.
I'm sure that's perfect. Now, how did you? So with that, you also started a record label, though, right? Like you did something in music. So you obviously loved music enough to figure out how you could branch out. Was this simultaneous and concurrent with your Twist and Shout experience, or was that after?
Yeah. So working at Twist and Shout, I had I was really immersed in the local music scene. Right. All the lots of musicians would come into Twist and Shout. Got to make friends. I would also hang out at a lot of bars. Where musicians were hanging out, and that sort of just became my social network, right? My friend group.
Yeah.
And so at one point, another guy that I worked with, the two of us were just talking about the burgeoning Denver music scene of the early 2000s, and decided that there should be somebody who does something about that and documents that and starts a record label, and certainly managing a record store and understanding, the ins and outs of that side of the industry, we decided that should be us. And so we ran a record label called Public Service Records for a couple of years. We put out releases by several bands. We put out one of the big things that we wanted to do that we saw happening in the Denver music scene was an unnecessary competition among bands that would complain that, oh, this band got this show and we should get this show and stuff. And so we decided that what would be a good idea is to get the bands working together. And one of the ways that we decided to do that was to put out a series of compilations of a bunch of different artists. And so, this was something that we did just out of a labor of love. I'm sure we lost money on every CD that we put out. My claim to fame, though, and I'm really proud to say this, is we put out the debut solo release of a guy named Nathaniel Rateliff, who is now a international superstar, and playing Mission Ballroom on a regular basis, Saturday Night Live, Tonight Show, and all that stuff. So
wow,
yeah.
Who is the most a well-known or famous person that you met across your time in the music business with the record store and with your label? Is there someone that, like, besides him, he's super famous, is there someone, a group or a person that most people listening would know, and what were they like?
Well, so working at Twist and Shout, we had a lot of in-stores. We were a nationally recognized record store, great owners, people loved coming there. So I've met lots of musicians at in-stores. I mean, Elvis Costello came and did an in-store with us. Trey Anastasio from Fish came and did in-stores with us.
Probably had a group of people around him too, because boy, people follow Fish everywhere.
Oh yeah. Those were huge. Some smaller bands that have been in there. I also used to DJ at a couple of local bars in the 2000s, pretty much, and I would have bands come and DJ with me when they were in town too. And so, I don't know. I've met lots of famous musicians. Here's an interesting story though that just came to mind, is that one of our biggest customers who I got to know, I'm not going to say we're friends and I call him up on the weekends or anything, but every time he would come into the store, we would talk for quite a while, was Randy Johnson, the pitcher.
Yes.
He was a huge music fan and he was especially into the new wave of British heavy metal and would buy tons of records every time that he was in. And I remember when Twist and Shout moved up to its current location, which is on Colfax across from East High School, he came in and we were talking for a while, and it's right across from East High School. And all of a sudden there were like, he was probably in the store for like an hour or so. And then there was just this huge group of like high school kids lining up, looking inside the windows, like,
they could see him, and he's so tall, right? Like he's a big guy,
and he still had that long mullet.
Yes,
I mean,
do you remember where he threw the pitch that hit the bird that happened to be flying across the infield during a game?
Yeah,
like that bird blew up, got hit by a 90-mile-an-hour fastball. Yeah, that was insane.
I am a big baseball fan, so yeah, I do remember that. And man, bad timing.
Timing is everything. So. So moving music, you and your brother, that you've talked about, your twin brother, you guys actually started a restaurant, and it was with like Philly cheesesteaks or something, right? Now, where does that come into the picture? Because you've done so much, and we haven't even gotten to law school yet. We're about to get there, but I want to hear about this business because I love food and I love music. So we talked on the onset. We're going to talk about all of it. So tell me about the restaurant business.
So Taste of Philly is a restaurant that my brother currently owns. It's a franchise. He owns part of the overall franchise and a couple of individual stores. So in the mid 90s, I'd moved to Denver, and I was working in the music department at Best Buy. And just down the road was a restaurant that had just opened a year or two earlier called Taste of Philly, and it was started by a guy from Philly named Ken. And so I would go in there pretty regularly, and then I told my brother about it, and he'd start going in there pretty regularly. And somehow he just landed a job working there, and then ended up managing the place. And then the owner said, "Hey, I'm going to open another shop down in Colorado Springs." And so he left Martin in charge of the Denver store. I think I'm remembering this 25-year-old story correctly. He puts Martin in charge of the Denver store. And then the two of them decide to open up a third location in Highlands Ranch. Eventually, I bought into that store in Highlands Ranch with my brother, and just sold my shares back to him last year. And so I'm now officially out of the restaurant business.
What was it like? Because and I definitely know that brand, Taste of Philly. I know it for sure. I came from the world of franchising. So as a chiropractor, I had 5 clinics, and then I got recruited as part of a chiropractic franchise that was up and coming, had 6 units when I started, and I got brought on as part of the executive team. That thing grew to 400 units over about 8 years. It was a pretty sizable thing that ended up taking place, and I was super blessed to be part of it. But franchising is interesting business, right? It's interesting because in the chiropractic world, I'm sure like in the restaurant world, chiropractors, we're all like herding cats, right? We all want to do it our way, and we all have our thing. So to ask them all to systematize stuff, there was some really interesting pieces with the franchising of healthcare that made it hopefully be consistent for results, but also really tough to manage. In the food business, was it like that for you guys with respect to making the cheesesteak the certain way and all this, or was it pretty standard fare?
Yeah, great questions to which I have no answers for you. I was the silent partner.
Oh, you were the investor.
Yeah. I was not hands-on in the stores. In fact, there was one point, maybe I don't know, a couple of years into after I bought in, my brother had just had some kids with his wife and decided, hey, if something happens to me, I want you to at least, you're co-owner. I want you to know what's going on here. He put me on the schedule for one day and sent me home after like an hour. Would not let me cook any cheesesteaks. I don't know what was behind that, but he was. That was really the extent of my in-store.
You were the taste tester.
Yeah, and now I don't eat meat. So so I'm really of no use whatsoever.
That's awesome. Okay, so now we get to your trajectory of your life changes. So you're totally into music. You know all these people. You get in. You dabble. We'll call dabble as an investor into the restaurant business. Something changes where you say law school.
Yeah.
Why law school?
Well, so like I said, I turned 30 and thought to myself, I don't know. Honestly, don't know if record stores are still going to be around. And I'm 30 now. I feel like I loved my life. I really enjoyed what I was doing and who I knew, my friends, and it was fantastic. But I just sort of felt, I don't know. I mean, it sounds pretentious to say a calling, but I sort of felt like a need to do something more. But I didn't know what that was going to be. I had gotten a degree in sociology with a minor in philosophy. Craigslist did not have any jobs available for sociologists with a minor in philosophy.
Yeah. And no modern day Aristotle's kind of thing.
No, weird. And so I thought about it and I said, well, I always enjoyed logic. I literally had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. I'd recently had an experience where I defended myself against a parking ticket, and I was like, "Oh, that's interesting." And so this is how I decided on law school. Is I Googled. I was like, "Well, maybe I could be a judge." Like that seems like logic is applied there. What do you have to do to be a judge? And and the internet told me you have to go to law school. And I said, "Oh, okay, that makes sense. What do you have to do to go to law school?" And Google told me I'd take a thing called the LSAT. I had never heard of the LSAT, so I took there's one morning when I'm off work, and I took an online LSAT test that day, and I got a pretty decent score. And then I said, well, maybe I should take the LSAT, like the real thing. And so I found out that there was a LSAT like 2 months down the road. Bought a book off Amazon and studying for the LSAT, and then I studied for the LSAT, and then I did even better on the real thing, and then I applied to law schools. DU accepted me, and so that meant I could stay in Denver, and so I decided to go to law school. Initially, I thought I was going to do music and entertainment because it sort of
makes sense.
Right. And so, I had a bunch of friends in the music industry that were getting some recognition, and I was like, oh, okay, well, maybe I could be a lawyer that helps musicians with, labels and stuff like that. And then I got into law school, and I took some classes that were related to entertainment law, and they just didn't really interest me. It was just like a lot of contracts. I don't know. It just didn't really motivate me that much. And and so I decided that I wanted to help people. And I got really lucky after law school. Well, in law school, I was fortunate enough to meet some really good people, have some really interesting internships, some professors that really helped me along the way. And one of those professors had worked at Holland and Hart, and she had worked with a guy named Bruce Jones, who is now a Denver District Court judge. And she recommended that I be his first law clerk, and I was. And so I clerked for him for about almost 2 years, and he was a plaintiff's lawyer at Holland and Hart before becoming a judge. I don't think they any longer have a plaintiff's lawyers division at Holland and Hart, but he was there, and he was very instrumental in helping me realize the good work that plaintiffs lawyers can do in helping people.
Well, mentors, I've found mentors being a critical piece of every stage of my life, right? Whether it be from coaches when I was a young athlete, or people that believed in me as I was preparing to go to chiropractic school when I didn't even believe in myself. I knew what I wanted to do. I just didn't know if I had the aptitude to do it. As far as the scholastics, I knew that I could get my hands on people and help them. I believed that even before I knew anything because of the way I cared and how I thought about things. But I didn't know if I could cut it academically. But there were people that believed in me more than myself, and then to help me be a good chiropractor and help me be a good business person, all like mentors. And it sounds like you found that. But now you want to be a mentor to people in a different way where you serve people. Tell us about the kind of people that you serve right now, who you're serving, what kind of a law you do for them to take care of them in their disability claims and things of that nature. Yeah.
Well, I couldn't agree more with you about the whole mentor thing. I've been fortunate enough to have a lot of good mentors in my life, including my current boss, Sean McDermott, and right now we're the only two attorneys at McDermott Law, and we focus our business on helping people with disability insurance claims, and I love what I do because I cannot think of a more meaningful job. Insurance companies, we all buy insurance, right? And sometimes we have to, and sometimes we do it because it's available, or sometimes we do it because our employer gives us an insurance policy.
So we're talking about health insurance now versus life insurance or business coverage or something like that. Is it predominantly health insurance?
Well, it's predominantly disability insurance. So it's separate. It's a separate line of insurance, and so it's a private disability insurance policy. Many people have it through their employers. It's part of your employee benefits package. A lot of people don't even realize that they have that. They think, oh, my provider or my employer provides me with insurance, and they think health insurance because that's the one that we mostly care about.
And it's what we use the most, so we're most familiar with, and the commercials of this and that and everything else. Got it.
And it's the one that you hope you never have to use, but you're going to have to use it, right? And that's true of most insurance, I think. But health insurance is probably the one that is most important because we all know we're going to have to go to the doctor at some point. We all know that we're going to get cold. We might, break a bone or something, and we're going to need to go see a doctor. Disability insurance is usually or often part of the employee benefits package insurance benefit that employers provide. So health insurance will be in there. Life insurance is often part of it. Accidental death and dismemberment is often part of it. And then you often have short-term and long-term disability insurance there as well. And nobody thinks about it because nobody thinks, oh, something tragic is going to happen to me and I'm not going to be able to work anymore. Right? Our mind doesn't even go there.
Right.
And so when that does happen, it can be some of the most important insurance that you have, because if you're, you have no job, you have no income, and you've got no ability to work, you need some safety net. The government has Social Security insurance, which is separate from what we do. But Social Security, is very, very minimal in the amounts that it will pay. And it takes a really, really long time to process and get. And so the work that we do is helping people with disability insurance claims. So sometimes we help people who come and say, I've been working for years and I've been working through this disease or this illness or these chronic pains and stuff. And I'm to the point, I can't do this anymore. Can you help me make a claim? So some of our clients do that. Unfortunately, most of our clients come to us after the insurance company. So they've been on claim. The insurance company has agreed that they're disabled. The insurance company agrees that they're entitled to benefits under the policy that they sold. And then the insurance company changes its mind and cuts them off and then they have to file an internal appeal to the insurance company. And we help them through that process of either they've had a denied or terminated claim. And so if it's an employee provided benefit, and if I get too technical, tell me.
Yeah, sure.
Employee provided benefits are often governed by a federal statute known as ERISA. It's an acronym for the Employee Retirement Income Security Act of 1974. ERISA was enacted in 1974 to help employees secure their employee benefits, like the name implies. Unfortunately, over the past almost 50 years at this point, which means I'm almost 50, and that's scary. But it has been shifted, and it really, really protects insurance companies now.
Okay, so now let's stop there. Let's explain that. So we have this plan. You have your employer typically. Now, can you buy your own disability insurance? Do a lot of people have that if they have their own businesses or high-risk jobs or whatever? Do they have to now go get on top of what a benefit might be provided by their employer first? And then second, ERISA now is involved in this. They're supposed to help you gain those benefits, but now they're kind of taking a different stand, like holding on to the money a little bit, right? Is that kind of how it works?
Yeah, and I'll start with that last part first, just because I often say that insurance companies too often care about protecting their money instead of protecting the people that they promised that they were going to protect. So yeah, I mean, ultimately that's where we end up, is in a situation where we're dealing with an insurance company that is more interested in protecting its money than helping the people that desperately need that help. And not that, I mean, this isn't charity, right? These people paid, right, or their employers paid
into
for
every
this
month
benefit
for years, months, decades.
Right. Yeah. And so yes, to that part of the question. And then as far as, can you go out and buy your own? Yes, you can. And we help a lot of people, a lot of professionals. So a lot of doctors, a lot of lawyers, a lot of business owners will have their own disability policies that they go out and they get from a insurance broker who sells that line of insurance. The good thing is, so those claims, if you go out and you buy your own disability insurance policy, those are not governed by ERISA. And what that means is that if the insurance company starts jerking you around, you got a lot more remedies than you do under ERISA. So we help those people too. And it's, again, when you have no job, no income, and no ability to work, it can be devastating. And it doesn't matter if you're somebody who was making $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 a month. It's devastating when you lose that source of income, or if you're making $1,500 a month. Right. It's devastating when you lose that income.
And right? When it comes to workman's comp, so if someone gets hurt at work and they can't do that, the disability insurance, does it work with the workers' comp system? Because the work comp is, I know if you claim workman's comp, you're eligible to get X percentage of your salary paid on the weekly basis and that kind of thing. So would this be a supplement to a workers' comp claim, or are they completely separate?
So they are different things. So you can be disabled for a million different reasons, right? You can become disabled because you get a degenerative illness that is hereditary, right? You can be in a terrible car crash. You can slip and fall and break a limb. There are so diseases and injuries outside of the workplace are usually the types of things that we're dealing with in our work with disability insurance. So work comp only applies to work injuries, right? So if you're injured at work, then you're in the workers' compensation system. Mm-hmm. And so we don't do that. We do office share with somebody who does work comp. I think you guys do some work comp here as well. Mm-hmm. So that is separate, but they can dovetail sometimes, and there can be some overlaps. And one of the things that we can do to help, so obviously we help our clients. We also help other lawyers with some of those overlapping issues that you were just talking about. And so, for instance, in a car crash case, if you are an attorney representing somebody who's been tragically, critically injured, catastrophically injured, and can't go back to work, they might have disability insurance through their employer. And so we try to get the word out to a lot of personal injury attorneys that you should be asking your clients, do they have disability? Because it helps you and it helps your client. It helps your client because it gets money in their pocket now, assuming the insurance company does what it's supposed to do and pays the claim. And it helps you because the attorney, because the client has money coming in and they're no longer desperate saying,
right.
Where's
settle the case? Settle the case.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. So, and when it comes to settlement, we can help attorneys make sure that their settlement agreements, and this isn't always possible, but often it is, that the language in your disability insurance policy may give that disability insurance company a right to a portion of your injury recovery, but it might not. And we've certainly worked with other attorneys in the past to make sure that their settlement agreements essentially carve out any right to reimbursement that disability insurance company might have, which gets extra money in your client's
bonus.
Pockets.
Yeah. What about, so we've talked about physical injuries and you said there's 1,000 ways someone can get disabled.
Sure.
What about from stress, mental health issues, emotional stuff? I'm sure that's got to be falling in one of those thousands of ways. And with what we've been going through with isolation and pandemic and, mandates of this and can't go there and closing down this, it's bred more isolation. People's businesses are closing down. We've had a lot of mental anguish. Is that part of this process too?
Yeah, it can be. So the broad definition of disability under most disability insurance policies is you're unable to perform the material duties of your own job. And most policies will have two different definitions of disability. So there's one that applies for the first term, typically for about 2, maybe 3 years. And that's the own occupation. You can't do your job.
Yep.
To sum it up. After that 2-year, 3-year period, the definition shifts a little bit and it's you're unable to perform the material duties of any job that you're otherwise qualified to do based on education, training, and experience. A lot of disability policies have coverage for mental health disabilities caused by mental health. And that is certainly something that we've helped a lot of clients with. The one thing to keep in mind, most policies, I've seen some that don't, but most policies have a limit of 2 years on a mental health disability. And then we really get into issues surrounding mental health, where the insurance companies will try to shoehorn a disability into mental health. And that makes sense to some extent. It makes sense that the insurance company wants to do that because they want to protect their money, right? But most disability clients, regardless of their disability, are suffering some depression, some anxiety because their world's been turned upside down. Right? And so we'll see too often an insurance company that will say somebody is disabled physically, but the insurance company will say, well, it's not really their physical disability that's rendering them disabled. It's their mental health around that physical disability. And that mental health is limited to 2 years, so we're going to cut them off.
So it limits their payout if they can categorize it into the mental, emotional side as opposed to the physical side?
That's right.
So you guys are their champions to say, well, let's look at all of this and see what is physical, what is mental, what is emotional to get the correct package in place.
Well said.
Got it.
Well said. Yeah.
Well, what if a person is going through a job and they have a physical or mental, let's say, they got a back issue, as it's dear to me as a chiropractor.
Sure.
Someone's got a back issue. They can't keep doing whatever they were doing, but they don't understand their disability policy. They never thought about it. They're just like, man, I can't do this anymore. So they leave their industry to go get another job, not knowing that perhaps there was a benefit there. Is that something, is there a 2-year look back window in that too, if they're already working in another job, or once they leave and get new employment, is that former employer's policy off the table for them? Because a lot of people listening may know someone or be in that position.
Yeah. It gets tricky. It really gets tricky, and it depends on the facts of each of those cases. I mean, we've certainly had situations like that. People generally, they want to be productive members of society, right? I don't care who you are.
Yes.
You want to give back and be a member of society, whether it's because you want to help people or just because you want to feel good about yourself. You want to be a productive member of society. And so, yeah, we definitely encounter people whose jobs shift and maybe not as extreme as what you're talking about, where you're like, okay, I'm going to quit and I'm going to go into a completely different career, completely different employer. But what comes up is within their own jobs, they start carving out things that they can't do and handing that off to other people, and end up, and this happens a lot with professionals, right? Doctors and to some extent lawyers, where they're doing less than what they were at their peak, right? Because they're compensating. They want to continue to work, but under their policies, yeah, they would be disabled if they were willing to say, I can't do my job anymore. And that's really what it comes down to, right? Is can you do the material duties of your job? And if not, then you're disabled. And so, but then, it does become a question of, a personal decision at that point of, well, I can still do something. Do I want to do something, or do I want to admit the fact that I'm disabled? And doing that can be a really, really tough thing for most people to do. People don't want to say I'm disabled.
Because we want to be independent, strong, take care of ourselves and our families, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So can they come to someone like you if they're in a position like that, where they're like, man, I don't know? Because here's the other thing I think about. What you just said really rang true to something in me. I've spoken with members of law enforcement and members of the military and had them on this very show. And every single time we talk, one of the big things that we talk about is those men and women do not admit not being able to do what they do. Now, I know that they're government employees, a lot of these, so they wouldn't fall under ERISA, but if they talk about, that last situation I was in, whether it's a battle for a soldier, or whether it's a domestic violence or fire that burns and kills a bunch of people, they don't want to go talk about it. They don't want to go share their feelings because they feel they might get benched or they might get labeled or it goes in their jacket. Do they have any ramifications, or do they have any access to these same kind of benefits if they work in the public service sector?
Yeah. Great question. And that is absolutely a real issue. The answer is probably yes. And I say probably because it depends on where they work, what benefits are provided to them, and what have you. But I know personally, I've helped many firemen with disability claims. And I think our office has helped police officers, but I'm not positive, only because I haven't handled those claims, and I know that their systems might be a little bit different, with what it is that they offer.
Sure.
And what have you. But and you are also correct that government employees do not fall under ERISA. The Congress went ahead and opted themselves out of ERISA when they wrote the legislation, and so the government employees are not governed. Their claims are not governed by ERISA, and again, that's really beneficial if you're state law is much kinder to injured people than is the federal law in this system. But yeah, so I think to answer your question, if there are people listening that fall into that category that want help, we're always willing to help people make claims if we can, if there's a claim to be made there. And to review policies, whether that's their individual insurance policy. With police, sometimes we're dealing with a pension type of a benefit and program and stuff like that. But yeah, I'm happy to look over if somebody needs help. I'm happy to see if I can help them.
How would they know? What kind of questions would someone be asking themselves? Like, I wonder if blank, and if they ask that question, that they would go, yeah, I should reach out and I should talk to Tim. Would it be like, man, I wonder, I can't do what I want to do anymore, and I don't know if that qualifies, or I'm thinking about quitting this job because it just hurts so much, or it causes me so much stress, or I'm feeling so much pressure to deadlines that I just feel like I'm going to crumble. Are there certain things that people should look to you to do that policy review, if nothing else?
Yeah. I think those are good starting points. I mean, really what it comes down to is, can you reliably and consistently continue to do the job that you're doing for 8 hours a day, 40 hours a week, 50 weeks a year? And if you're struggling to answer that yes, then you may have a disability claim. If you're saying to yourself, so we certainly have clients, again, people want to be productive members of society, and often they work longer than they should have, and especially when we're dealing with those types of chronic issues, right? You get in a car crash and your life turns upside down, and there's an immediate need that's clear, right? But you're talking more about these chronic issues that are building up over time. And really the question I think that someone needs to ask themselves is, can I continue to do my job? Am I struggling here? And is the struggle due to a disabling medical condition?
Mm-hmm. And if they did have that and they answered yes, but they didn't hear this before they quit that job and went somewhere else or started their own business, should they still call you and get more information just to find out and get closure, or it's too late once they leave that employer, it's over? Yeah,
it gets tough, especially when you leave employment. It can be done. It's certainly something that we can look into, and it depends when the disability started. So when we're talking about a change of employment, two issues come up. One is, do they still qualify for benefits under their old employer's plan? Right. And that is really, you take out a timeline and you try to figure out when did they become disabled and were they really disabled? Anytime you've got somebody who is making a claim after they're no longer insured under that policy, they're going to get some kickback. There's some pushback from that insurance company.
Absolutely.
Right? And then the other problem you run into is under their new employer, can they make a disability claim with that new employer? And that is also maybe it depends, because a lot of disability policies do have pre-existing condition limitations. And so if it's a new policy with a new employer, there can be a look back period to see, well, is this something you've been dealing with before? If it is, the insurance company will say, well, it's not our problem.
Right. Pre-existing.
Right. And so while pre-existing is no longer permitted in the healthcare realm, it is still alive and strong elsewhere, including a disability.
Well, man, Tim, this has been such great information. I mean, really, I learned a bunch here. I'm sure our listeners learned a bunch here. I have a couple more questions. But first, if people wanted to get a hold of you or the firm to find out more or ask about their case or for a loved one, what's the best way for them to reach out to you guys?
Yeah, so we're on the World Wide Web, as I think everybody is these days. So, our law firm is McDermottLaw.net. You can also find it under ColoradoDisability.com, I think. And my personal email, I'm happy to give out, is Tim at McDermottLaw.net. Our phone number is 303-964-1800.
Perfect. Now, two more questions. One, do you still want to be a judge? Is that still something on the docket? Like, that's what started all this. Would you love to be a judge and sitting on the bench someday?
Yeah. Great question. I actually applied to be a judge about a year ago in Denver. That process, I did not get nominated, and it was a process. I think it made me realize that there are still things that, well, made me realize two things. One, there are still things that I probably want to do professionally before I explore that again. And two, when I actually sat down and thought about what it is to be a judge, and I'm fortunate enough to know several judges who've been mentors to me throughout my legal career, and I've spoken with several of them too about their experiences in judging as being judges. I like helping people. I like advocating for people, and I like standing up and fighting for people. And you don't get to do that as a judge. You get to sit back and decide who's right and who's wrong, but you don't get to stand up and fight for people. And judges are still doing good in the world, but it's a different kind of good. And I love what I do. I love what I do. And so I'm not sure. You're
not rushing over to the bench just yet.
I'm not looking to give up what I do anytime soon.
Nice.
Yeah.
So final question. If you had one piece of advice that you've been given or one thing you've learned along the way that has really become a cornerstone to you, helped you achieve all these things, helped you overcome the adversity, whatever it would be, can you think of what it is? And if so, would you mind sharing it with our audience?
Man, that's a good question. I think that there's a couple of things that come to mind. They're just short sayings, and but they help sort of frame what I do and motivate me. And the first is, there's no right way to do the wrong thing. And in doing the work that I do, basically suing insurance companies, I live by that motto often, because
so good. I've never heard that. That's amazing.
Because to me, insurance companies are often trying to figure out the right way to do the wrong thing, because they're wrong. What they're doing is wrong, and they want to justify it a million different ways. And so to me, there's no right way to do the wrong thing is pretty motivating. So it helps keep me on path. And then this one's going to be a little bit more on the pretentious arty side of things, but there's a Japanese film, the post-war Japanese, I think it was, I can't remember, 1948, 1950, somewhere around there, called Sancho the Bailiff, that I love. And it's a very simple story, and it starts off with the saying that, and I might get this slightly wrong, but without compassion, man is but a beast. And I think that that's a really, really important concept for me, because it forces me to remember our humanity, and it forces that compassion for one another is a thing that separates us from animals, and it's a thing that makes us really, really, really unique. And the ability to act and live with compassion is an important part of my life.
Well, those are two things that I am going to absorb into my life like a flower takes in rain and sun, man. Those are beautiful. You're awesome. Man, Mr. Tim Garvey, thank you for taking the time, for joining us, and best luck. You know that you have a friend here with us always at Ramos Law, and that we are so excited to be working partners with you to send you business and make sure that those people are taken care of. If you've listened to this and it's moved you, please reach out to Tim and his firm if you need anything on answering those types of questions. Also, pass this around. If someone that you know might be able to benefit from this information, or just wants to hear a great story about music, send this to them. You can subscribe to our show. It's on YouTube. You can subscribe to it on Apple or Spotify or any other podcast channels. And we just really want to help make a difference. So until we talk next week, please enjoy your week. Take care of yourself, and just know that you are cared for here at Ramos Law. Have a great day, Tim.
Thanks, you too, man. Thanks so much for inviting me. This has been great.
Absolutely.